appreciate because I think it's a really hard day to start, so I hope I'll be appreciating and make a short presentation, and then if you have questions or some discussions, we also appreciate it from my side. So just several days ago I received, before that a couple of weeks ago I received a message asking whether I would like to make a presentation. I say, why not? And then several days ago I received a program and I was a guest lecturer. In the mail I was called a key speaker, so it's not really really key presentation, but I would like to present some tentative results of my research. And first of all, I would like to express my gratitude to Yuri at Kyiv in Cologne, and in particular Dr. who is here, for good advice. So, research problem actually the research I present today is that we live in a global world with a huge competition, and if we look at the different governments policy, we can see that all governments are obsessed with the economic growth, and there is a political and well theoretical dominance of neoliberal interpretation of social development, which basically is equivalent to economic growth. There is a triad of economic growth, growing well-being, and expected life satisfaction. And this triad is key in any government's policy, whether it's democratic or authoritarian, because it makes it possible to have a stable political regime. And in this situation, political elites in Russia and Ukraine, they consider modernization policy as a way to build an innovative, competitive economy. And the ultimate goal of this innovative economy is a prosperous society with life satisfaction and people who work for the same government. So this is the ideal of political elites in many countries. But in particular cases of some societies, sometimes it's really desirable to have this Western prosperity, but without some Western institutions, democratic institutions, and some values. And if you study values for many data sets, that there are some differences between countries and values, and in particular East European countries, maybe even from West European countries. So the research question is actually whether East European societies can achieve high levels of development, or they're confined to a different cultural program. And there are two basic approaches: universal approach, which said that growing prosperity leads to shifting values, and shifting values accounts for rising democratic institutions. And alternative approach is multiple modalities theories, which focus on different cultural interpretations. So probably there are different values and there are different ways to modality. So does this indicate that cultural program in East European societies can be an obstacle to modality? From existing research, we know that there are really big differences in peculiarities in Russia and Ukraine. And if we look at graphical representations of European countries by many indicators, and especially values, like in the recent publication by we can see approximately the same order, the same hierarchy, from advanced, well-developed Nordic societies to some post-Soviet societies who are at the bottom of So East European societies and post-Soviet societies, they really different. There is a gap in values compared to West European societies. So, but does this mean that the model is not applicable to the region? And if we assume that modernization is a universal process, and the model which is used, model by Yuri and it is based on the idea of universality, and there are some empirical evidences that this is a universal process. There are some logical arguments that this is a universal process. And in this presentation, I focused on some part of this modernization model, namely Yuri's socialization hypothesis, which was rarely tested directly and sometimes criticized, not really often, but criticized on theoretical grounds. And for example, Chris did it in his dissertation. So I use this three-element theoretical model, which includes individual resources, objective use of choice, so resources that make people able, the motives of choice, and effective rights to implement human choice. And to explain the mechanism of the value shift, Inglehart suggested the socialization hypothesis, according to which the values we observe, they are formed during the period of socialization. So this model is presented, it's not just logical, but it's also humanistic model, because the idea of modernization process is that modernization leads to human empowerment. This is basically comes from the development of centuries of human thought. So research goal and data. Research goal is to test whether there is a substitution of materialist priorities by post-materialist in East European societies compared to West European societies, old European Union members, and whether a socialization hypothesis is valid to explain such a trend. The data set consists of integrated world values away, European values away, and with the matching questions, I have 16 countries for analysis, 13 countries in Eastern Europe, which actually represent most of the region, just several countries are omitted. And there are 3 countries from Western Europe. I also can address the question of why I don't use multi-level model, because I don't use multi-level model, because I have so small number of countries. And the small number of countries, of course, I would like to include more countries in analysis, but unfortunately, there are no matching questions of the same weights for Eastern European and Western European countries. And basically, only 3 countries, which are not really bad for analysis, because Germany represents continental European, Western European society, Spain, Mediterranean, and Sweden represents Nordic, Scandinavian, and advanced societies. Variables and hypotheses of research. So the response variable is the level of materialist, post-materialist values in society. And since for testing hypothesis, it is necessary to have at least 3 time points. So 4-item post-materialist index is used as a measure for response variable. Also kind of a problem, because of course 12-item post-materialist index would be better, but it's also not possible to make analysis for Eastern and Western European countries in the period, or in the long period of time from 1995 till 2008. So to estimate effects in the value change and test the socialization hypothesis, are used as predictors. So one variable stands for, this is EO first, stands for cohort variable, which is considered as a proxy for socialization. And the time variable year of survey stands for other changes, contextual changes, which always exist in the process. In society, in any society. So the hypothesis is that absolute change in materialist, post-materialist values in either West European or East European societies is due to cohort replacement, and therefore immigrant socialization hypothesis can be true. So as a method of analysis, I use linear decomposition to trend. This method allows to differentiate two components of social change, which are universal components. One component is due to contextual factors, social change, which exists in any society, and other component is cohort replacement, the demographic change, and we as this component I try to estimate socialization. Employing regression model, then Farwell, who actually suggested this approach, designed equations which allow partition change. And this approach was successfully used in identifying mechanisms of change to support democracy, for instance. So this method can display trends which otherwise we can see. So the test of hypothesis, so the hypothesis tested via binary logistic regression in this particular case, and statistical significance of the coefficients, of the predictors, represent whether any of these factors are significant, whether which component, what is the role of overall change of each component, whether it's contextual change or cohort replacement. So if regression coefficient of cohort replacement is significant for the increase of post-materialist values, then Engelhardt socialization hypothesis is correct for this period of time, for this specific society. Also, in all-S regression, it is possible to estimate relative effect size of those components. Since I use a logistic equation, it's unfortunately not possible, so I just focus on statistical significance of the coefficients and their direction. So, starting from descriptive statistics, we see expected differences in number of pure post-materialist and materialist European societies, and we also can see adverse tendencies of values change in different countries. And based on these statistics, there is no universal trend related by Engelhardt and his collaborators. So it's quite expected. So we see Sweden on the one side with the highest percentage of post-materialists and post-Soviet states with other Eastern European societies on the other. Yeah. So the same is with the pure materialists. So the highest proportion in Moldova, Russian Federation, and as well as we can expect the lowest in Sweden, Germany, and some Eastern European societies as well, such as Slovenia, for instance. But if we look at the difference in groups of materials and post-materialists in 2008 compared to the mid of 1990s, we can see that there number of materialists and post-materialists mostly actually there are different trends. Post-materialists, I think that it's better to estimate this as graphical representation. So for post-materialists, which are red, in almost all societies there are just changes. There are no changes, just with a marginal error, just with the exception for Latvia. But for Spain and Germany, we can see quite significant drop in the number of post-materialists. So we lose post-materialists in Western European societies, at least in this case. Sweden is absolutely stable. As for number of pure materialists, it's quite more significant change, and it's quite steady decrease of the number of pure materialists in East European societies, which is actually which actually matches. Yes.
I'm sorry, maybe it's the end of the day and my processor is too warm, but I have difficulty understanding this graph. The red line represents post-material.
Yeah, pure post-materials in the country.
Change. Difference between
it's a change.
periods.
It's a change
in the number of post-materials.
Yes, in percentage.
Okay, in the percentage. And the blue line respectively represents the percentage of change of materials.
Yes, of pure materials. Okay. And X represents for every country.
Thank you.
So it's just probably easier to present this change. So simultaneously oppose groups. But for some countries, so if we look at this graph, so we can see that for most East European countries is really a trend with significant decrease of materials, so they move to group of mixed. Mixedness is something not really identifiable, so we don't know what actually this means, but in terms of pure materials and pure post-materials, we can make some conclusions about this tendency. So post-materials, they don't grow, mostly don't grow in Eastern European societies, but materials, they decrease. The number of materials decrease. In West European societies, there is at least for two societies, for Germany and Spain, there is an adverse trend. So the number of post-materialists decrease, the number of materialists significantly increase, as well as in Confederation. So this is just descriptive statistics, and what actually is behind this discrepant trend. So with an observed value change, two components are estimated, which are cohort replacement effect and contextual effect, and the regression coefficients are the log odds ratios of belonging to pure materialist group that is regressed on predictors, year occurs and year of history. So for cohort replacement and for contextual effects, and the sign of the coefficients indicate the ascending, positive, or descending negative trend. So this table, we can see the general idea. So significance of coefficients for contextual change and cohort replacement effect for just pure post-materialist group. So the first column is intercohort change, which is contextual change due to any factors, any political situations or any problems, or like immigration, something like that. And cohort replacement stands for demographic change, when younger cohorts come and replace older cohorts. And green color means that either intra-cohort change, or cohort replacement. There is a significant, the coefficient of the low cohorts is significant. So I don't indicate the relative size of this coefficient because we can't, unfortunately, we can't compare for different models for each country. But we can compare the significance and the direction of the coefficient. And we can see that, and the red color and the minus, they represent, there is a significant decrease of the low odds of belonging to pure post-materialist. And there is also possibility that this coefficient is not significant. So the tentative conclusion from this analysis, those two components. So with the exception of Latvia, for all societies in analysis, either Eastern European or West European, cohort replacement in the which is a proxy for socialization process, because younger cohorts are coming with an increase over yield burst. And it is really some change in the growing possibility or to belong to post-materialist group. Although sometimes it's not really visible. If we look at the descriptive statistics, it just put in with a marginal error. So it just can be overpowered by other effects, contextual effects. So the conclusion is that actually there is some change which shows that in the high socialization hypothesis can be true for both selected West European and East European societies. And this study supports the modernization model if assumes that emancipated cultural values are for pre-socialization process and remain relatively stable during the life course. However, this modernization model suggested by Hart and his collaborators can be amended by incorporation of contextual change, which has very strong effect on values and, as I said, often overpowers socialization effect of younger cohorts. So thank you very much, and I appreciate your comments.
Would you like to take your questions yourself? Would you like me to collect the questions? Or would you do it yourself?
Well, I can do this.
Thank you.
So, yes, please.
I have two questions.
There is another. Okay, you can keep it with you and we can pass this one.
Okay, yeah. First, about this intra-cohort influence that obscures the socialization, the cohort replacement. I think that my suggestion that it can also be explained in the hard work. When he wrote that the conditions of security also influence the values. So, and that if we hypothesize that in many both Eastern and Western European countries, even in case when GDP rises, it doesn't make life of people more secure, especially in Eastern European countries. And it could influence the value change even across the lifetime of every individual, although it makes the socialization hypothesis rather weak and strong. And my question is, could you please show once more this graph where the differences in naturalist and post-naturalist? From this graph, it seems to me that that graph of materialists' percentage change is more steep. So it makes it's done by not only from post-materialists but from mixed persons. I think that if they're more steep than the red line. So then could we think that your regressions on pure post-materialist doesn't show the whole picture because it obscures the interaction of materialism and this side of value change?
Yes, this is not the whole picture, of course. And of course it's worth making the same regressions and linear decomposition of pure materialist group, which just is not presented here, and also worth to control for other variables. As for mixed, it's really a problem of methodology. In the methodology just having these three groups, materials, post-materials, and mixed. And from this trend, it's just problem of availability of data. This is the biggest period which I could access. And this is the largest number of countries which could be included in the analysis. But it's really not a long period of time. The problem with the Engelhardt's socialization hypothesis is just we don't have enough data, at least for Eastern Europe, and at least for Soviet societies, to make conclusions, because for socialization probably takes decades, but this is just for 10, 12 years. And it's really difficult to interpret. What we can see in Eastern Europe is that the number of pure materialists decreases, but the number of pure materialists didn't increase. So they just become mixed, so people are not moving to this pure materialist group. But what is surprising for me, that it was just a big hole in number of post-materialists and vice versa, the growing number of materialists in such societies like Germany and Spain. And it basically means that Eastern European, some Western European countries, they move towards each other. But as you said, you're right, it's not the whole picture. Something is behind that.
I'd like to pick up on that strange change in Spain and Germany. Are you planning to check for more Western European countries? Because when I'm thinking about that, then it comes to my mind that this is unfortunately not the study from 1995 to 2008. It's the study from 1995 and 2008. And we know, for example, that in 2008 there was this crisis already in Western Europe, which came later in Eastern Europe. And then probably you would be really interested to look for more Western European countries to get some proof for your hypothesis. Are you planning to do this, and in which design?
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, first of all, it's not my hypothesis, it's really hard hypothesis. Actually, it's really interesting that what you're saying, you're right. There are some contextual factors like crises. Although 2008 was exactly before crisis, so there was no such reflection. But if you took some previous waves, let's just check how was it in 2000, I can't remember exactly, I think 2004, right? It was the same trend in Germany and Spain, when it was all right. But some contextual factors, they do influence on this, on people's priorities, on people's values. They exist, but my point was just to show whether there is some concealed trend which is free from influence of contextual factors. Although we are those contextual factors, there are some feelings of security or unsecurity which impact on people during the socialization. But for those younger cohorts, which we can see for this period of time, there was a period of socialization of relative improvement of situation before all those problems of 1990s, for instance, in Eastern Europe. Yes, please.
Thank you. I think the point is Germany, and that is, I know when the field time was, and it was different. I would first of all propose to split Germany, West and East Germany. I'm sorry to repeat it and repeat it again. Because 1995 was really 5 years after the fall of the wall. And the second point is really the field work was a little bit different. West Germany was the field work a little bit earlier than Eastern Germany, and Eastern Germany was mainly the field work done after the crisis. And so that is, and it means here we have a lot of East European countries, and Spain was, I don't know when the crisis really reached and when the field work was, at least maybe at the starting point of the crisis were the West European countries, I think at least. And so I would really recommend control for it. Meaning, have a look at the time of the field work and then also compare it with other West European countries. Maybe they are earlier than the crisis started or later on. And maybe there's a pattern. Otherwise, this is a period effect.
Yeah. This is just for this short period of time. So I can't assume what is going on before or after that. But this is quite a weird trend, and I was really pleased to find something stable. That for cohort replacement, it's quite uniform. Yes, Christopher.
Thanks a lot for the very interesting presentation. There's one aspect I'm still trying to make sense of for myself, and that's, I guess as we've been referring to, there are two basic mechanisms that Engelhardt is referring to. The one is socialization, which is the mechanism through which values are changing, but that doesn't determine the direction. Of course, the direction is determined by economic scarcity, or more broadly speaking, economic or just insecurity or security. And so, in a sense, it doesn't make sense to me that you're finding such a uniform effect of socialization, considering there are such different economic conditions or conditions of security or insecurity. And an additional problem that occurred to me, and as you mentioned yourself, we don't really know how long the socialization effect takes. When does socialization occur? How long would we expect cultural life to last? Because if we don't know the answer to that question, then we could presume that if we don't find the answers that we're looking for, then, well, we're still in the process of cultural life. You know what I mean? So I'm wondering if that could be specified, how long that period would be, how you manage it.
Yes, I agree with you. This is really a problem. So we have, I have results, but this is a problem with interpretation. So basically it grounds on theoretical reasons. So if I would like to promote Engelhardt's hypothesis, I would say that this is actually a proof. At least I wouldn't say this is direct proof, but this is indirect proof for his hypothesis. But I would say so with cautious, because it's just an assumption. Because as I say, it's difficult to have the whole picture. To be sure that it's really socialization which has this effect, which we can see through regression models. But further research is needed, and probably with more complex design, trying to. So I would appreciate any suggestions how to capture other factors to make sure that. Because when I'm talking about the contextual factors, it's quite obvious that we live in a society like when something happens like economic but still it exists in the context. And it's interesting that socialization for different societies, it was also in different conditions, but surprisingly, different countries, they showed similarity in this aspect. So I didn't expect this result, honestly. So I expected that Western Europe or all EU members, they should be different. But so something really interesting. So, Alexei, please.
Just a short question. Sorry if I missed that, but how do you split? By what cohorts do you split?
Excuse me?
By what cohorts did you split the population, or is every year another cohort?
It just the variable which stands for cohort replacement is year of birth. So in the regression model, its interpretation of the coefficient is that with a growing year of birth to the younger, it means the log odds ratio of the order.
So it's not the cohort itself, but the cohort replacement?
Yes, this is cohort replacement. Okay, thank you very much, and I hope we'll have additional 20 minutes for some rest.
Maybe we can just start the next course 10 minutes earlier.
Yeah.